small amount. Well, hopefully I'll try to make this enjoyable even for the people who don't have Blackberries. Okay, so today's talk is going to be about social engineering. Now, I know what it says in the agenda, and I know what you guys have been expecting, but the more I thought about it, the more I developed this talk, it made more sense for me to actually base it on social engineering so that you guys can actually take something useful from it, rather than me coming up here and telling you about, just doing a demo and then running off. So don't all of you decide to get up and leave at the same time. If you must leave, do it quietly when my back is turned, because I'm very sensitive and I take things personally. All right, so social engineering. I'd like to talk to you, you guys in the security industry probably know social engineering as the hack that works every time. I saw a TED talk recently given by British journalist Misha Glenny, where he gives the technical term for social engineering as there's one born every minute. This is apt because essentially what you're doing with social engineering is that you're taking advantage of somebody's trust, somebody's inherent human trust. You're taking advantage of that, you're manipulating him, and you're making him do things or making him reveal information that you would want. So what has this got to do with a Blackberry or any device for that matter? Well, it's simple. No matter how secure a device that you have, there's always an opportunity that you're going to get owned. I think that's a statement worth repeating. No matter how secure a device you have, there's always a chance that you're going to get owned. How? Through social engineering. And why should you care? Because of your personal information, your personal data. If you guys just, excuse me, I'll give the people a chance to settle down before I continue. Okay, all settled in. All right, so again, social engineering, the hack that works every time. There's always a chance that you can get owned. Why should you care? Because of your personal data. Now, if you're like me, I like to keep my personal data personal, private. I don't want to share that with anybody. So I'm going to tell you a little story about something that happened to me early in September. I was flying to Singapore for the day to meet with a friend and to sort out some paperwork that I had. It was just a day trip. I would go in the morning and come back in the evening. As is customary, when I fly, I take along my leather jacket with me because I get cold on the flight. So this time was no exception. Flew to Singapore, met with my friends, sorted out the paperwork, and was getting ready to come back home when I stopped at one of the cafes in Singapore airport. I had a bit of time left to be able to grab a quick coffee, so I did that. Slung my jacket over the chair, got up, went to the counter, paid for my coffee and donut, and I came back to my table. When I came back to my table, I noticed my jacket was gone. So stopped for a bit, looked around, couldn't find my jacket. I was at the right table, but I couldn't find my jacket. So I got this feeling like what you get when you go on a roller coaster or when you hit some turbulence on an aircraft, like my stomach was in one place and my body was somewhere else. So frantically looked around, hoping to find somebody who had actually taken my maybe by mistake or maybe on purpose, and couldn't find anyone. So by now, the feeling in my stomach had actually made its way up to my head, and I had this monster headache. Not because I lost an expensive jacket. It was a really nice jacket, and I missed that jacket. Also not because I lost a $700 Blackberry phone. No, the reason I had this monster headache was because all my personal data was on the Blackberry. I mean, my entire life was on this Blackberry. My contacts, my email, my SMS, the high scores to Brick Breaker and Sudoku, everything was on that, and it had disappeared. So I looked around as much as I could, didn't have any luck, and I had to abandon the search that day, just go home because I had to catch my flight. So if anyone of you have ever experienced this, I think you should count yourselves lucky, as unfortunate as that may sound, because you can use this feeling to protect yourself in the future. I mean, for me personally, I'll never let this happen ever again to me because of this feeling. I constantly think back to this feeling that I had, the feeling that I get when I know that somebody else has access to my personal information. Somebody out there is able to read my personal information. So you guys should consider yourselves lucky if you've ever experienced something like this. So what does this have to do with Blackberries anyway? As technology improves and becomes better and better, these phones that we use today are becoming more powerful, becoming much smaller. Technology drives this evolution, and the Blackberries or the mobile devices these days can shoulder a lot of the burden of some of the tasks that we do on our laptops. For example, I have a primary set of tasks that I do on my laptop. For example, I do my research, conduct pen tests, write reports, write white papers, all on my PC. And then I have a secondary set of tasks which I do, which involve browsing the internet, checking my mail, communicating with colleagues and friends using IM. Now, my BlackBerry can do all of these secondary tasks with ease. It's not a big deal. I don't have to break out my laptop wherever I go. I can just check everything on my BlackBerry, check my email, my IM, and I can browse the internet. Although I must say that the BlackBerry has one of the worst or less good internet browsers out there. It sucks ass in comparison to the iPhone browser. And I can see my boss laughing there because he has an iPhone. So despite that, I can still use my BlackBerry to do all these secondary tasks. So here are some of the reasons why I selected my BlackBerry, or why I picked the BlackBerry to use. It's got push email, it's got a full QWERTY keyboard, it's got granular security controls, transport level security, and device encryption. Now, since we're at a security conference, I'm not going to dwell too much on the first two, but instead, I'll talk to you about the other three. Granular security controls. So the BlackBerry has a set of permissions very similar to a PC that you would get maybe in Unix or in Windows. A set of permissions that determines how applications will interact with other applications and your data. So using these permissions, I can allow or deny access to my user data. For example, if an application wants to access my email or my contacts, I can either allow it or deny it. I can allow or deny access for an application to interact with other applications. So for example, if an application wants to talk to my email client or my Maps client, I can either permit that or deny. And internet connectivity. So again, if an application wants to connect to the internet to a specific site, I can either say, yeah, allow it or deny it. Moving on to transport security. So if you are to get a BlackBerry it's essential that your telco supports the BlackBerry infrastructure. So if your telco doesn't support BlackBerry, then you're not going to get the BlackBerry service. But what's interesting is when your telco provisions it, it's not actually terminating it at the telco. Instead, it's just relaying it down to the servers in Canada. So all your data, your browsing, your email, everything is routed through the RIM servers in Canada. So as you can see in the diagram, any point between your BlackBerry and the RIM servers is encrypted. This includes HTTP traffic, clear text traffic, for example. This is a good thing because people on your network, on your local network, can't sniff it. They cannot sniff your data, and people at the telco can't sniff your data. So the only guys that can actually look at your data are the guys in Canada at RIM. And I have no problem with RIM being able to access my email because, I mean, when have you last heard a war started by a Canadian? Canadians are generally pretty cool guys. I like them, so I have no problem. And my best friend is a Canadian, so I have no problem with the Canadians reading my mail. And the next step is device encryption. So what this is, when you have an SD card, for example, or the memory on your device, you can lock it down so it's unique to your phone. So if you pull out that memory card and stick it on another BlackBerry or another reader, that data is not going to be able to be read. Same with if you take apart the BlackBerry. If you take it apart and pull out the chip and try to read it, if you've locked it down with device encryption, you're not going to be able to do that. So this is excellent if your device is stolen or lost. So back to the three things that I just spoke about. I mean, just with these things, you know the BlackBerry is quite secure. All of this is relative to the BlackBerry Internet Service. Now you get two types of services. The BlackBerry Internet Service BIS, which is more towards the consumer market. And then you have the BlackBerry Enterprise Server, which is BES. That is what the large organizations use. And if you use a BES service, then you're going to have much more security. For example, you can build on top of this a set of IT security policies. So your security team can push out these policies and make sure that you're either that you adhere to the main security policy of the organization. They can do something called a remote wipe in case your device is lost. All they have to do is just key in a few commands and your phone is wiped remotely. You don't have to worry about somebody getting access to your personal information. And also they're able to restrict applications that you install on your BlackBerry. Now this could be a mixed bag. Sometimes you want to install stuff like Facebook or Twitter or something like that, or maybe it's denied by the policy. But you get this on the BlackBerry Enterprise Service. Now, not stopping there, because maybe some of you still think that the BlackBerry is not as secure as it could be. So I did a small experiment by searching Security Focus about 2 weeks ago. I did a search. I mean, as all of you may know, Security Focus is a website that catalogs vulnerabilities. It hosts a couple of mailing lists, and people write in all security-related information. So I did a keyword search for two keywords. One was BlackBerry and one was iPhone. I just wanted to see what types of vulnerabilities were plaguing each of these devices. And this is what I came across. So the BlackBerry has two vulnerabilities detected since the time. Yeah, I'm just nodding to my boss there. And the iPhone has 39. Now this is only on the device. If you're talking only on the device, the BlackBerry has two. One of them was actually found in September, and I don't know if you can actually call it an exploit because it's the way the BlackBerry handled a certificate with a null character. So it wasn't like a remote code execution or something like that. But the iPhone, on the other hand, has a few more bugs than the BlackBerry. So BlackBerry, pretty secure. So why do we want to hack a BlackBerry? Basically, people tend to put a lot of personal information on the BlackBerry. With the way, like I mentioned, technology moving ahead, you tend to do a lot of things on your BlackBerry now. You can do internet, email, etc., and it becomes an essential part of your life. And so you end up putting every little thing that you have on your BlackBerry. So with the evolution of technology and the way that mobile devices have steadily improved, you begin to trust it more, and you begin to put a lot more data on it, you're doing a lot more things on it. So the amount of personal information that goes onto the BlackBerry or your mobile device is significant. So what kind of personal information are we talking about? Well, most high-end phones these days have cameras. There could be some personal pictures of yours, naughty pictures of your girlfriend or boyfriend, depending on how you swim. Private text messages, for example. Maybe a couple of messages in there that you don't want your wife or husband to read. Emails, always a good thing. Websites these days, when you register on the site, they immediately send you an email saying, this is your username, this is your password. And I don't know, still to this day, people use the same password throughout all of their services. Oh, excuse me. So they use the same password throughout their lives, for the email, for the login, everything. So if you have one password, you have all of them. Further in email, you find things like maybe financial information, contractual details, and again, obviously personal information. And lastly, you're going to have your phone call logs to see who you've been calling and who's been calling you. So, okay, we know why, because of the personal information. So we have a reason now to hack a BlackBerry, because we want to get our hands on that personal information. I mean, it's not like we need a reason to hack, but this is one of the reasons. Of course, we're going to run into a few problems though, because as you know, the BlackBerry is a secure device. So how do we hack it? Actually, before that, so we know the BlackBerry is a secure device, and we know the minute that it leaves, that information leaves the BlackBerry, it gets mangled and encrypted and impossible to read. Similarly, while it's on the BlackBerry, all the data is encrypted as well. But there's one point where the data is not encrypted. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't really read raw AES encrypted data. So when I use my phone, I need to see clear text data. So at that point, when you're interacting with your phone, your data is in the clear. So the way to hack it is obviously to place a program on the BlackBerry that can read or remove that information while it's in the clear. So all we need to do is place a program, an application on the BlackBerry that can pull out all this information while it's in the clear, before it leaves the BlackBerry and before it gets encrypted. But to do this, we're probably going to run into a few problems because we can't hack it. There are two vulnerabilities. One is a certificate vulnerability, so you can't really exploit that. So there are no useful vulnerabilities to use that you can hack into the BlackBerry. We can't MITM the BlackBerry, or we can't do a man-in-the-middle attack, because obviously the transport level security is going to take care of that. So that's out of the question as well. We could probably steal it, but then if you're looking at stealing it, you're kind of crossing a boundary, and I mean, you're moving into the physical space now. If you're going to steal a BlackBerry, you might as well steal the guy's wallet, and it's not really something that I prefer to do. Okay, so let's think for a minute that we did gain access to somebody's BlackBerry. How easy would it be to take the information out from it? I mean, is it going to be a god-awful task? Is it going to be really cumbersome? Turns out, no, because RIM has provided quite a vast array of API calls, and the RIM API is quite extensive. So I'm going to cover a little bit of the APIs that we can use to take the information out, and give you maybe accompanying scenarios of each of those APIs. So let's start off with DTMF tones. So in the software versions leading up to version 4.3, there used to be a method called getDTMF tones. Now, what this method does is when you're on an active phone call, there's a DTMF phone queue. So say, for example, you're checking your voicemail. You key in your PIN to access the voicemail. If you call the getDTMF tones, you're going to be able to pull out that set of numbers that you dialed. So just by using this method, you can pick up all the DTMF tones that you dial into your phone on an active call. Now, after version 4.3, we're presently at about version 4.7, about to move into version 5. There are unofficial copies of version 5 out there in the market right now. Not in the market, I mean, it's free to download if you know where to look. So after that, they removed this method. So it's not going to be as easy as it is to pull out these DTMF tones. But if you look a little bit deeper, you can still use some of the methods like add key listener, which is essentially a listener. It listens for key presses. So add key listener, once you implement it, it'll monitor things like key down and key up events. So if you push a key, that's a key down event. If you release it, it's a key up event. So by using this, you can have a key listener and essentially set up a sort of key logger, which you use then to collect the information. Now, another case where you would find this useful is in phone banking. So somebody logs into his phone banking and keys in his account number, keys in his PIN, and so you have his account number and PIN. And what you do with it afterwards is entirely up to you. How about text messages? Well, for text messages, there's a package called JavaX wireless messaging. Essentially, it's another listener that you run, but what this listener does is it listens for SMS messages, incoming and outgoing SMS messages. So once you implement that, the listener will tell you, okay, I've got an incoming SMS message, what do I do with it? So we can tell the BlackBerry to do something with this message. So for example, if I want to take a copy of that incoming or outgoing SMS, I can do that. Similarly, using the same package, you can also send and receive SMS messages without the owner's consent. Now, this is mostly useful in cases where you have micropayments. For example, if you have a vending machine that requests you to send an SMS for you to buy a candy bar or to buy some soda. So you send an SMS and the money is deducted off your phone, you pay it in your phone bill. So you can actually do the same thing. I mean, you have a victim who's got a compromised BlackBerry, so you go up to the vending machine, but instead of sending the SMS yourself, you send a command to your compromised BlackBerry for him to send the SMS. So he's paying for your soda or for your candy bar. So I'll try to give you a little bit of a look at as to how this would work. So this is the inside of the BlackBerry. We've got a listener set up there. And what it does is it waits for an incoming SMS. So once the listener receives that SMS, it says, okay, I've got this message, what do I do with it? So we've already told the listener, okay, if you get an SMS, just take a copy of it and forward it to a server outside, to my server outside, for example. And then you can display it on the user's screen. It's very similar when using email as well. Instead of using a message listener this time, you would use a folder listener. This folder listener watches your inbox and outbox for incoming or outgoing messages. And so through this, you can also intercept emails being sent to and from your BlackBerry. Again, using the same package, you can send spoofed email messages. For example, if you want to have some fun and you want to have one guy insult his boss or his girlfriend, you can just send out a spoofed email from his BlackBerry and then sit back and watch the fun. Oh, the next one is a cool one. You guys would like this one. Remote listening. So this is not really a straightforward attack, but it's a cool one nonetheless. I'll set the stage. So the idea is you have a victim with a compromised phone, and you as the attacker give that phone a call. And so when the compromised phone sees this call originating from a specific number, it silently picks up the call and puts the phone into speakerphone mode so that you can actually hear everything that goes around near the owner of the phone, near the victim's phone. So to achieve this, you have to do the attack in a few stages, and I'll explain those stages in a second. But this sort of attack is really cool for spying on people. Like, so if you want to find out what your employees are talking about you behind your back, you can just spy on them when they go home after work. You can spy on people who go into maybe important meetings, corporate espionage. You can activate the spying mechanism and then turn the phone into a bug. And as long as the guy doesn't look at his phone and wonder, hey, what the hell, I'm on a call, you can continue to listen in on the conversations. These days, it's most effective because, I don't know about you guys, but I always keep my phone with me. It's always on. And Blackberry users are kind of leaders in this area. They kind of sleep with their phones, and I don't know, they probably, all they don't do is take the phone into the shower. But I mean, they don't call it Crackberry for nothing. People like addicted to it. So it's good because they always have their phones, so you can always listen to what's going on around them. So I'll explain a little bit about how we actually achieve this. We start off with a phone listener. Again, like the message listener and the folder listener, the phone listener will listen for incoming phone calls. And once it receives a phone call, it checks, okay, is it coming in from a specific phone number that I recognize? When it does, then we start doing the other phase of the attack, which is to pick up the call. Now, sadly, RIM doesn't have an API on the phone to enable you to pick up the call. So instead, we turn to what is called the event injector. Now, as it is aptly named, the event injector injects events back into the Blackberry. So if you want to artificially invoke an event, like a new mail message or something like that, you can do that with the event injector. It turns out that the event injector can also inject keystrokes. You can make the event injector behave in a way as if the victim or the user was typing into his phone. So you can actually inject key events into the Blackberry. So to give you an overview of how that works, that's your Blackberry with the phone listener and the event injector set up. So you get a incoming call, and the phone listener says, okay, I've got a call, it's from the attacker's phone, I need to do something with it. So it talks to the event injector, and this is where we have our code placed. So the event injector does two things. It mutes the call so that the phone doesn't ring, and then it answers the call. So at that point you have an active call and you can actually listen in. But the problem with this is that at this stage, it's on a call that you'd use, the phone would be placed near your ear, so the microphone isn't sensitive enough. So what we do is we just send an additional key injection event to turn on the speakerphone. And as long as the attacker has his phone on mute, and he doesn't say anything, or he doesn't arouse the suspicion of the victim, he can listen in all he wants until the victim discovers that his phone's been compromised. Moving on to the camera API. This is also another fun thing that you can do. So using the package Java X Micro Edition Media Control, you can use the get snapshot method to capture an image from any of the Blackberries that have a built-in camera. Ideally, you can have this set up on a timed base. Actually, not ideally. You could have it set up on a timed base, so you've got a picture taken every hour. But I find it more effective to do it on a trigger-based event. Like, for example, when somebody's on a phone call Because when somebody's on a phone call, they're going to pick up the phone and they're going to hold it like this. This gives the camera a much better view of wherever the guy is. So he's up there, he's holding his phone, and if he's like me, he's probably going to walk around a lot, you know. So when he's holding his phone up like this and he's walking around, if I time it to take pictures every 10 seconds, I can get a pretty good understanding of where he would be. If you couple this together with the GPS, you get a really good mechanism of finding out where somebody is. So again, using the package JavaX micro edition location, you can do a method called get qualified coordinates that will tell you where about this phone is. I mean, most of the Blackberries, most of the newer Blackberries have a built-in GPS, so you can do this. Again, you can do it either time-based or using a trigger. Again, I prefer to do it with a phone call, so that you can have a log of when you call somebody up and says, "Where are you?" He says, "I'm in the office," but he's probably at a strip club or something like that. This one is an old finding. This was discovered in 2006, blackjacking. It was presented at DEF CON, and is a simple but very effective way of compromising enterprise networks. So the paper came together with a tool called BB Proxy. Now, what BB Proxy did was, once you infected a phone with BB Proxy or installed BB Proxy in a phone, it will connect out into the internet to an attacker-controlled server. As you know, Blackberries on an enterprise network are always connected. They're always connected to the enterprise network. So it would also be connected on the inside. And what BB Proxy did was it just simply bridged the gap between the attacker's host and your inside network. So essentially, you've got unrestricted access directly into the enterprise network through the Blackberry. You don't have to worry about firewalls. If you decided to come in through the front door, you'd probably spend ages or you'd probably never get in. But through this, you can simply just go straight through. Once you're in, you can then do your usual assorted hackery like port scanning, attacking hosts, etc. A few other hacks that you can do, stealing contact information. For example, you own the sales manager's Blackberry and you pick up all his contacts, and there you go, you have your next set of leads to call to ask for business. You can alter contact information. So for example, you have a guy's 300 contacts. You just read them in, randomly swap them around, so when the guy's calling Uncle Bill, he's actually calling one of his best customers. You can run up a victim's phone bill, obviously, not an old thing. You can just make him pay by just making calls to international numbers. You can also use a victim's phone to send bulk SMSs. You can, similar to the analogy of using a compromised server to send spam, you can compromise a Blackberry and send bulk SMSs as spam as well. So, we know that people spend their lives on their Blackberries. We know personal information is a good thing to have, especially if you want to further your quest in world domination and maybe kill the guy next to you or bury the guy next to you. So personal information is a good thing to have. You get all sorts of advantages by having information that that is inside information, for example. We know that it's easy to pull out information from the Blackberry once you actually get into the Blackberry. So how would you get into the Blackberry? And with all the hype this talk has generated, I think this is going to be a disappointment, but there is no technical way of hacking a Blackberry. It's not possible. It's just too secure to do that. So we have to rely on good old social engineering. Low tech, I know, but can be effective. So let's look at a few ways where we can own a BlackBerry. Starting with physically actually installing the spyware on the BlackBerry. So you go up to somebody you know preferably, and say, hey, I've got some problems with my Google Reader or my Google browser. Can I just check quickly on your BlackBerry? And you take his phone, browse to the website with the spyware, install it, give it back to him and tell him, okay, it seems to be working fine on your BlackBerry. Maybe it's a problem with mine. But by then you've already owned him, so that's one way of doing it, physically implanting it. Another way of doing it is by maybe writing your own game. And hopefully, maybe even you can charge the guy for it. So you write your own game, and you have the game sitting on top, just pretending like it's an actual game, and then below the surface, you have your spyware doing whatever spyware would do. This is a bit difficult, I think. Takes too much effort. So I prefer to do it in a much more simpler approach, like having an enticing slideshow. Maybe an enticing slideshow with like the hot girl of the day or something like that. I mean, we've got plenty of hot girls in the HITV jobs booth, so I can probably call the application David's Girls. And this would probably be something people will be willing to download. And if I give it for free, I mean, what the hell, right? So I'll have the slideshow running on the top and the spyware doing its nastiness on the bottom. Another way you can do it is by renting an SMS gateway. You could, I mean, there are so many public SMS gateways out there that you can buy credits from. So once you get this SMS gateway, you can probably spoof an SMS. Now, this is not going to work on everyone. You can spoof a SMS saying it's coming from the telco provider. So you send an SMS to the user saying, we've got this new upgrade, or we've got this new program. Please browse to this site and download it and run it. Granted, the percentage that this would work is far less than the other two. But if you're a large telco provider in the UAE, you can just do that yourselves by sending all the SMSs to your entire subscriber base, like Etisalat did in July. So for those of you who don't know Etisalat, it's this large, horrible, well, it's not horrible. It's this large telco provider that's gradually taking over telcos around the Middle East and in Asia. What they did was they sent a message. This is the exact message that they sent. They sent a message to all its BlackBerry subscribers saying, dear Etisalat BlackBerry customer, blah, 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 provide you with better service, yada, yada, yada. And they had the customers download essentially a patch. They called it a patch, a performance upgrade patch. It wasn't. It turned out that this was spyware. Now, I was fortunate enough to get my hands on the spyware before when it was released early. And I had a chance to look at it, and I analyzed it. And in short, it was a complete piece of crap, because it wasn't written to take advantage of the BlackBerry's features. I mean, it was written more in a way that you would write for a PC. I mean, obviously, when you consider mobile development and PC development, it's completely two different things. I'll tell you why some of the problems, or the way it went so badly. So how did the spyware work? Once it was installed on the BlackBerry, it started off in a dormant state. It didn't do anything. It would just stand there, wait for a command. It would listen, it would keep querying the BlackBerry messenger service, and it was looking for messages coming from the sender customer service. It was on the lookout for 4 commands. One was start, one was stop, one was backup, and the other one I can't remember. But once it received a start command from customer service in a specific format, then it would begin to monitor all that user's outgoing mail. So once it was active, it would forward this mail to a server somewhere on the inside of Etisalat. So essentially, Etisalat could get access to your outgoing mail. Now, what were some of the problems with it? Incidentally, the whole thing, it went very badly for Etisalat because the spyware stopped, it didn't function very well, and in the end Etisalat was, people knew that Etisalat was trying to spy on their subscribers. So one of the problems with the spyware was the fact that it would constantly check the message queue every few seconds. Now, for development on a Blackberry, you don't need to do this. As I spoke about the other APIs, all you need to do is set up a listener on the message queue. You don't need to constantly check the queue every few seconds like this used to do. So by doing this, you're actually driving up the processing, the CPU usage, and driving up the amount of processing power you need. The second was actually that the source code was available, sort of. The application was released with two versions of two versions of the executable. One was a bit difficult to decompile, the other was relatively easy. So once I got my hands on the easy to decompile executable, I was able to reverse. I worked my way backwards from there. So I reversed it, and then I had a good idea of what was going on under the hood. The last one was that the backend server collapsed. Now, I don't know if it was intentionally switched off or whether it went down as a result of not being able to handle the load. So what happened was this entire subscriber base of BlackBerry users had this spyware installed, and they were beginning to poll this server, or not poll the server, they were sending messages back to the server saying, okay, spyware is installed on this device, this is my model number, this is, some information about the phone. So when all of these people started communicating with this server, it stopped responding. So then you had all these subscribers trying to communicate with the server that didn't respond, and they were constantly retrying. And again, as a result, this drove up processing power. So what happened? Users began to see degraded performance, to say the least, on their Blackberries. It was really slow. Some users experienced overheating, and almost all users experienced significant battery drainage. So like I can use my Blackberry for about 1.5 days on average. These users were seeing full charge to empty in under 30 minutes, all because of this badly written spyware. And people were pretty pissed. If you read some of the tweets that were out there during this time, you could get the general idea of the sentiment that they had towards Etisalat. Etisalat is not very well liked, and this kind of drove their credibility further down. I should know because I actually worked at Etisalat for 5 years. So all this was beginning to smell like a legal interception exercise that went bad. Etisalat had actually hired this firm called SS8 to write the software. It wasn't written by Etisalat, it was written by a company called SS8. Now SS8 is known for their expertise in the areas of legal interception. I don't know why this one was the exception, because this was, if the software is indeed written by SS8, it was they've done a pretty poor job of it. The funny part is, to this day, Etisalat maintains that this was actually an upgrade patch. Even after RIM put out a statement saying this is indeed spyware and here's a tool to remove it, they still stuck to the fact that no, it's an upgrade, we were giving this to you as an upgrade. And worst of all, SSA didn't even comment on the whole scenario. So they seem to have got the concept of legal interception wrong, because generally, to define legal interception is, in short, the government's right to spy on you if they suspect that you're doing something illegal or terrorist related. Now, generally with legal interception, you don't go and say bug everyone's phones. You don't say, I want to listen into everyone's conversations. You just identify the suspects and then you push that software out to only those suspects. But in this case, Etisalat was either ill-advised or not advised at all. And that is basically how it all went downhill from there. But anyway, I promised you guys a demo, so I'm going to try and do that right now. Okay, first maybe I should introduce my first program, known as Bugs. So the job of Bugs, or Bugs' task, is to spy on your messages, your keystrokes, your voice, and your location. I had a few problems in getting it up and running for today. So today we're only going to see Bugs sniffing ingoing and incoming and outgoing emails. I do have a working prototype of the portable bug that I spoke about earlier, so if you guys want to see it, you can come see me later on and I'll demo it for you guys, just so you can get an idea of what it looks like. But for now, for today, Bugs is only going to sniff your mail. So what Bugs does is once it's installed on your Blackberry, it tries to be stealthy by hiding itself from the applications menu. And generally when it's not on the applications menu, you don't know it's there, and there's no way you can uninstall it because you can't see it. There are, however, ways you can uninstall it, but for the average user, or even maybe for the tech user sometimes, maybe the power user, they might have some difficulty in removing it. So this is one of the things that it does. It hides itself from the applications list, but I've still placed the icon on your downloads folder so that you know Bugs is there and sniffing your email. So what it does is it forwards all the sniffed email to an email address called charlie@zensa.com. Now I own that email address, so I can see all the mails that come in. Now, if any of you guys are feeling brave, I would recommend you download Bugs and let me read all your email. So I don't know if I have any volunteers who would like to try it out. Crap. All right, so if you guys just bear with me, I'll just connect to the internet and try to find the mail server. So you guys have that URL? Okay. Anybody trying? Hands up, anyone trying it? Oh, Prabhu's trying it. Excellent. Already done? Or no? Come on. Because I don't have a camera to show you guys what it looks like, but I can try to log on to the email address, email account and show it to you. Let me try that now. So it's not enough that you actually install it. You have to send out an email to somebody so that I can see it. But okay, so I've got quite a few messages. Don't want to. Okay, here's a message I get from my daily rapid share download site, because I download a lot of TV episodes. Okay. Let me send out an email now. So hopefully you guys should see this increment, and there it did. So if I just open the last one. So I sent a mail from my Gmail account to my Zensei account, and I mean, this is the format that it comes in. I'm planning to make a backend server that reads the XML message, but this is the way it looks for now. So still nobody brave enough. Okay. It's cool because you can actually remove it afterwards. So that's actually a screenshot in case the demo went horribly wrong. So this is what you would see on a normal BlackBerry. If I didn't have the stealth enabled, you'll see bugs installed there. What I do is I use an API called the code module group, and I set the group's flag to hidden. And then once I do that, it disappears from the applications menu. So once it's disappeared from the applications menu, you cannot, I mean, you don't know it's there for one, and you can't uninstall it because, well, for one, it doesn't show up. There's another way where you go into the modules of your applications and try to remove it from there, but I've marked it as a dependency, so you cannot remove the spyware from using this method either. One way you could do it is to physically connect it to your computer and use the Java loader to remove it, but it makes it very difficult to remove. Okay, so bugs was one. He spies on people. The next tool is Kisses. Now, Kisses loves bugs very much. She loves him so much that if they're on the same phone together, she goes looking for him and finds him. So Kisses is my attempt to develop a spyware revealer of sorts. So bugs or similarly designed software which are designed to hide themselves can be detected from this. In general, it's possible to manually remove the malware or the spyware, but it becomes a bit tedious because you have to go through a lot of modules. I mean, you have to go through a lot of data. You have to look at a lot of stuff. And if you cleverly design the name of the application to look like it's legitimate, you're probably going to miss catching it. So Kisses is a tool that will simplify the searching and the removal of similarly designed spyware. Now, if you have installed bugs, when you download Kisses from here, it detects the presence of bugs and reveals it so that you can uninstall it. So this is a screenshot of what it looks like. Right now it only looks for bugs because I was having some problems with the demo, so it only does this for now. Okay, so I've got, I think, 5 minutes left, so wrapping up. I showed you that the BlackBerry is very secure. It still remains secure. You're never going to hack it technically. It's really secure. But the problem is with the complexity. I mean, these are two screenshots of the permissions and one of the modules. I mean, for a regular user, this stuff's really complex. Even for a power user, you're going to have to read through a lot of information or a lot of documents to actually get to a state where you're comfortable with in order to know everything that's going on inside your BlackBerry. The other problem is that the BlackBerry apps are not regulated. For example, lots of people complain about the iPhone regulation process and about the App Store. There are lots of complaints that people's applications are rejected by Apple because on the Apple App Store, when you develop an application, you have to submit it to Apple for them to take a look at. And only then, once they deem it fit, will they publish it on the App Store. So if you were to release spyware and you send it to Apple, they'll say, hey, you're telling everyone it's a game, but it's doing other things, and they're bound to reject it. Now, this sort of closed system, while it's not good for some aspects, is sort of good for security because you have somebody actually looking at the code, but no such luck with the Blackberry. With the Blackberry, all you need is a code signing key, which you pay $20 for, and you can start developing applications and pushing them out to unsuspecting users. So I'll give you a few fundamentals on what to do or what to watch out for when you're out there. Don't install random pieces of software. I guess this goes without saying, even on a PC, but especially on a Blackberry, don't go looking for software that's very obscure. I mean, if you are faced with the task of installing some software, check it out first, research it online, look at reviews. I mean, hell, mail me if you want, and I'll take a look at it. But just be sure what you're installing on your Blackberry. Just don't go randomly installing it and reading the developer's description and just installing it based on that. Now, the Blackberry device is very good with productivity. It comes with a set of built-in tools that will help you get your work done. You don't need to bloat it further by installing every little piece of software out there. So, I mean, in addition to consuming memory, you're also opening yourself up to possible spyware. So limit that as well. Learn and set the default application permissions. Now, by default, the Blackberry device has, it's not very restrictive, but it's not very lax either. It's got a mid-level set of permissions. But the way I did it was I started off with the most restrictive permissions and then worked my way down. So I installed the most restrictive permissions, then installed all my applications, and each application complained, I need to access the internet, I need to access this, that. And then by that time I realized what my applications were trying to do. So I left it like that with individual permissions set for each application. So you could probably do that as well. I will be posting some links and some blog posts on later on, so you guys can follow that if you like. This is an obvious one as well. Don't let other people use your phone. I mean, there's no reason that they would need to. I mean, these days everyone should have their own phones. If you're faced with an instance where you have to let them use your phone, then watch what they're doing with your phone. Don't just give it to them and expect them to be nice. Lastly, always enable a device password. Again, maybe something obvious, but yeah, it hampers productivity a bit because you're going to have to log in every time. But this is the least you can do in case your device gets lost or stolen. At least you're protecting your personal information. Your private information is protected at all costs. So if you guys want to keep up to date, just send me an email at these addresses, or you can read my blog. I promise I won't spam you guys if you send me an email. I'll just, whenever I update a blog post, I'll just shoot you guys a quick one-liner saying new blog post regarding this. Or you can follow me on Twitter or just check the blog directly. So, any questions? No, you're excluded. Okay, tell me.
So, could you have written the bugs application for iPhone, considering an App Store and no background processing?
Funny you should ask, because there is a tool that is available for the iPhone that does similar things. The only problem with that is you need to have a jailbroken phone. So for all you jailbreakers out there, beware, because you're not safe. Right? Before we go, I'd like to acknowledge my company that I'm working for, Hermes Consulting, and thank them for their support, for coming in.